The War of the Castilian Succession was the military conflict contested from 1475 to 1479 for the succession of the Crown of Castile, fought between the supporters of Joana la Beltraneja, daughter of the late monarch Henry IV of Castile, and those of Henry's half-sister, Isabella, who was ultimately successful. The war had a marked international character, as Isabella was married to Ferdinand, heir to the crown of Aragon, while Joanna was strategically married to King Afonso V of Portugal, her uncle, after the suggestion of her supporters. France intervened in support of Portugal, as they were rivals with Aragon for territory in Italy and Roussillon. Despite a few initial successes by the supporters of Joanna, a lack of military aggressiveness by Afonso V and the stalemate in the Battle of Toro led to the disintegration of Joanna's alliance and the recognition of Isabella in the courts of Madrigal Segovia. In 1476, immediately after the indecisive Battle of Peli Gonzalo, near Toro, Ferdinand and Isabella hailed the result as a great victory and called courts at Madrigal. The newly gained prestige was used to win municipal support from their allies. The war between Castile and Portugal alone continued. This included naval warfare in the Atlantic, which became more important, a struggle for maritime access to the wealth of Guinea. In 1478, the Portuguese navy defeated the Castilians in the decisive Battle of Guinea. The war concluded in 1479 with the Treaty of Alcarcovas, which recognized Isabella and Ferdinand as sovereigns of Castile and granted Portugal hegemony in the Atlantic, with the exception of the Canary Islands. Joanna lost her right to the throne of Castile and remained in Portugal until her death. This conflict has also been called the Second Castilian Civil War, but this name may lead to confusion with the other civil wars that involved Castile in the 14th and 15th centuries. At other times the term Peninsular War has been used, but it is easily confused with the Peninsular War of 1808 to 1814, part of the Napoleonic Wars. Some authors prefer the neutral expression War of 1475 to 1479. Precedents. Succession to the crown of Castile. Joana la Beltraneja, born in 1462, the first and only daughter of King Henry IV of Castile, was immediately named Princess of Asturias. A rumor spread that Princess Joanna was not actually the daughter of King Henry, but rather of Beltrán de la Cueva, alleged lover of the Queen, Joan of Portugal. Joanna was thus nicknamed La Beltraneja, as a mocking reference to her assumed father. In 1465, a group of nobility assembled in Avila and overthrew King Henry, naming Alfonso king. This led to a war that ended in 1468 with the death of the 14-year-old Alfonso. Henry IV regained the throne, but the title of heir became disputed between Joanna, his daughter, and Isabella, his half-sister. This was resolved via the Treaty of the Bulls of Guisanda, which gave Isabella succession rights but restricted her marriage options. Isabella secretly married Ferdinand in 1469 at the age of 17, ignoring Henry IV's wishes. Gradually the couple gained a larger number of supporters. They obtained a papal bull sanctioning their marriage from Pope Sixtus IV in 1472 and gained the support of the powerful Mendoza family in 1473. When Henry IV died in December 1474, each of the two candidates for the throne were proclaimed Queen of Castile by their respective supporters. Aware of their position of weakness against Isabella's supporters, Joanna's supporters proposed that the 43-year-old King Afonso V of Portugal, a widower for some 20 years, marry Joanna, his niece, and assume the throne of Castile together with her. International alliances. The Kingdom of France and the Crown of Aragon maintained a long-held rivalry for the control of Roussillon and, more recently, for hegemony in Italy. In June 1474, French troops invaded Roussillon and the Aragonese were forced to retreat. on the possibility that the heir to the throne of Aragon would also become King of Castile. Louis XI of France officially positioned himself on the side of Joanna and Afonso in September 1475. France was simultaneously at war with the Duchy of Burgundy. This made Burgundy into theoretical allies of Isabella's supporters, but in practice, they continued their war against France without coordinating their actions with the Isabella alliance. England was also briefly at war with France with the disembarkation of King Edward IV in Calais in June 1475. But through a quick diplomatic response, Louis negotiated peace with Edward and signed the Treaty of Picquigny in August. Edward IV accepted a truce of 9 years in exchange for significant economic compensation, and returned to England. The Kingdom of Navarre was experiencing an intermittent civil war, and the Muslim Kingdom of Granada remained neutral, despite Portuguese efforts to draw them into the war. Rivalry between Castile and Portugal in the Atlantic throughout the 15th century. Merchants, explorers and fishermen of Portugal and Castile had been penetrating further into the Atlantic Ocean. The possession of the Canary Islands was a point of contention between the two crowns. Later on, the control of commerce with the territories of Guinea and Elmina, rich in gold and slaves, grew to a dispute of even greater importance. During the first half of the century, Castile staged the conquest of a few of the Canary Islands through feudal pacts, first with Norman knights and later with Castilian nobles. Portugal opposed Castilian authority on the islands and continued the exploration of Guinea, with significant commercial benefits. Beginning in 1452, Pope Nicholas V and his successor Calixtus III modified the previous policy of the neutrality of the Holy See and issued a series of bulls favorable to Portugal. They gave Portugal commercial control and ample religious authority over all of Guinea, and in areas further beyond. The Holy See did not arbitrate the question of the Canaries, whose conquest had been left relatively suspended. The King of Portugal adopted a freer commercial policy that allowed foreign subjects to trade on the African coasts in exchange for taxes. In August 1475, after the start of the war, Isabella claimed that parts of Africa and Guinea belonged to Castile by right, and incited Castilian merchants to sail to them. This initiated a naval war in the Atlantic.